What links Malaysia's Petronas Towers with shelters for earthquake victims in Iran, or restored parts of the old city of Jerusalem with a brand new traders market in West Africa? What can bring one of the world's most famous architects to the same stage as a mud builder from the Yemen? The answer is that they've all shared in the world's richest architectural prize. It's a prize that defies categorization because it's more about what buildings do for human well-being than about how imposing or brilliantly designed they are. Over the next 4 programmes, prepare to be surprised because you may be about to rethink your ideas about architecture and the Islamic world. The Aga Khan Award for Architecture is one of the most coveted international awards in the ultra-competitive world of architecture. It's an award that stands out from many others, as Norman Foster, responsible for the Reichstag redesign, London's Gherkin and many other iconic modern structures, attests.
Every award is special, but this one is very, very special because it's such a prestigious award. And it's, in every sense, a very discriminating award, so I think it's enormously respected. It's not an easy award to win, and you can see that by looking at the track record of the programme.
It's not so much the design of the buildings that wins a prize, but how those structures benefit the community. That's why it's an extraordinary mixed bag. Prizes have been won by rural schools, as well as high-rise modern apartment buildings.
From the very poor to the very wealthy, the physical environment in which they live is central to the way they look at life. And therefore, we took it upon ourselves to try to impact all the areas where people live, which is the only three-dimensional art that we have.
The Aga Khan, head of the 15 million strong Ismaili Muslims, wanted the award to recognise and by so doing promote diversity in the Islamic world. For the award, the boundaries are anywhere where Muslim culture has a significant presence. That's why, for example, Singapore and Cyprus are among the countries included this year. In the worlds of architecture, restoration and urban planning, the award is particularly valued for the rigour of its selection process. The selection takes place over a long and gruelling 3 years. This time, 343 detailed nominations were considered. Of these, only 27 went on to a shortlist, and all were visited by technical experts. The checks are rigorous too. In April, we accompanied an expert on a trip to Yemen to investigate 2 nominations from the Middle Eastern country. Iraqi-born British architect and writer Salma Samar Damluji is an authority in buildings made of mud bricks. This year, she assessed the restoration of the town of Shibam in Yemen. With its desert skyscrapers 9 stories high, it was one of the shortlisted projects.
The city is still extremely dramatic, and it represents one of the most important international examples, if you like, of mud brick high-rises.
Even to an untrained eye, this Manhattan of the desert is a wonder to behold, and evidence of its restoration is plain for all to see. But as one of the world's leading experts on the subject, Salma Damluji is fully equipped to examine the quality of it and see through any comments which might not be telling the full story. And she puts the project architects through their paces.
There's just a bit of generalization that's taking place, which I'm surprised that you who are living here can talk like this.
I know very good what was the situation 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't know 40 years ago.
Yeah, but you're the one who said 40, not I. And it was used upstairs this morning too.
The technical reviewers are briefed to leave no stone unturned.
And this arch. Now just look at the arch. Don't look at anything else.
Yes, and the arch.
Photographs are taken, a succession of meetings and conversations, up and down stairs, down alleyways, onto roofs, and in and out of houses, notes taken. The assessment done, the reviewers compile and send detailed reports to Geneva, headquarters for the Aga Khan Trust for Culture. In early June, they go to the headquarters to answer the jury members' questions. The reviewers are grilled by a 9-person jury drawn from a wide range of disciplines, including art, history, engineering, philosophy, and contemporary arts, and make their recommendations.
People next to him. He said, "You work with me."
See here the image of the street as a very restrained and refined series of concrete and stone walls.
This is what the garden looks like. It's actually quite attractive, this whole idea.
The jury then goes into its final closed session and over 3 days chooses the co-winners, often through tense debates.
Areas as such, and I think that's
the only two reasons I would even dream of voting against such a wonderful building are the fact that I think it leaves something to be desired aesthetically.
Yes, I mean, on what criteria would we admit this into the final?
Very unsatisfying. They are really narrow. They are.
You can. I mean, I can tell you. You see these all over the place.
And they don't see. To be honest. I think that will not help.
It's a process of real careful discussion, really careful discussion, a great deal of thought. You move from specific projects to larger issues.
It was very difficult for 9 people from completely different backgrounds to manage to reconcile their differing criteria.
They won't admit to this, but they can decide what is beautiful very quickly. And then thereon is a process of actually checking and making sure that the beauty is also functional. It's not just in the eye that you see it. So the winners that, in my opinion, are buildings that not at a first instance grab you, but then there's also a whole story about how they got to that place and why.
And to further underline how different this award is, there's not even a fixed number of prize winners. That's at the jury's discretion. Last time, 7 winners shared the $500,000 prize. September 2007, and it's time for the awards to be announced in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. 200 invited guests fill the Philharmonic Hall at the foot of the Petronas Towers. The Prime Minister of Malaysia and the Aga Khan walk onto the stage to hand out the awards. The results of 3 years of planning, inspecting, shortlisting and deliberating are about to be revealed.
Sometimes projects are overlooked because of the political will of this side or that side to push this or that element. Sometimes the best project loses and the second project comes in first because of the consensual requirements of certain, processes. So it changes every time. We don't know. Let's see.
The rehabilitation of the walled city, Nicosia, Cyprus. The winners, the Nicosia Master Plan team. Nicosia, the largest city on the island of Cyprus. The city walls were built more than 400 years ago to deter an Ottoman invasion. But many of the buildings inside the walls are even older. They display a diverse array of architecture: Byzantine, Gothic, Ottoman, and more recent styles. Perched at the eastern end of the Mediterranean, It has a long, turbulent history. Conflicts between Greek and Turkish Cypriots saw the island divided in 1974. The old walled town of Nicosia was also split, with a buffer zone running directly through the middle of it. What was once a vibrant city centre became a no-man's land, patrolled by United Nations peacekeepers. But separation was not quite complete. For example, starting in 1979, there was cooperation on sewage management. Away from the political spotlight, other common concerns emerged. These included safeguarding a shared architectural heritage. Such common concerns gave rise to a UN-sponsored master plan to protect that heritage.
Many people abandoned the areas that were next to the buffer zone and moved out. The city was abandoned completely, it was neglected.
Despite the conflict, both the Greek and Turkish sides saw the need to find a way to work together. And the vital needs of both communities provided the impetus for what was the first common project carried out by the two communities. In the early 1980s, under the umbrella of the United Nations Development Programme and funded largely by the European Union, the Nicosia Master Plan was implemented by authorities from both sides.
We believed that although the city was divided, still the life continued on both sides, and we really needed cooperation. We had difficult times, but yet we found out that we shared the same vision with Mr. Dimitriadis.
The first meeting with my friend Mustafa Akinci on the other side took place in this house. And at that time it was impossible to even think that this thing would happen.
The initial plan focused on two areas immediately adjacent to the buffer zone, Arabamet in the Turkish north and Chrysalinio-Tisa in the Greek south. These residential areas were particularly run down, but were of significant architectural value. Since then, dozens of other projects have begun on both sides. This Turkish bath in Nicosia's south is in a pristine condition now, but it wouldn't have got a second look before its restoration. A mosque in Nicosia's north. A square whose restored arches are providing a now thriving tourist centre. Each one of these is a prime example of the work of the Nicosia Master Plan, whose efforts over the last 25 years are providing long-term tangible benefits. One of the main aims of the Master Plan is to preserve the historical heritage of Nicosia's buildings and urban landscapes. Traditional materials and techniques are used wherever possible. Many of the buildings are constructed from a soft yellow stone and sun-dried bricks, and local craftsmen from both communities are employed on the restoration projects. But not all the work is carried out in the traditional manner. A wide variety of buildings have been restored under the Master Plan. Residential, commercial, government and cultural, each one requiring a fresh approach. One of the most prominent examples of a newer building is in the city's south, where this 1930s power station has been transformed into a contemporary art gallery.
You see beautiful buildings now becoming alive again. The old hammam being used again and all that. By keeping it alive, I think we also send a message of hope to people in general.
Now that the Master Plan has been in place for more than 25 years, people are seeing tangible benefits. Along with the rich architectural and urban heritage, many people now enjoy a rejuvenated community life. In the south, local people have now embraced the Master Plan, giving it fresh momentum. In the north, the response has also been good, but there's often a sense that progress has been slower.
They will rebuild in some area, and it's a pity, I think, because in the street where I live, they are going to restore one side, but not the side that I live.
But despite the difficulties, the master plan has demonstrated that Greek and Turkish Cypriots can work together for the common good, and that may prove to be its greatest legacy.
We should plan so that this dividing line, which is an anachronism and something irregular, unnatural, when this goes away, people will not have to wait for years and years. It must be left intact, the structure of the city, so that it can be used the moment the politicians or whoever will decide to allow freedom of movement.
It is because of this plan that we have saved the history of this town. We have saved the future as well.
The Royal Netherlands Embassy, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Winners, architects Dick van Hammeren and Bjarne Mastenbroek. How do you represent contemporary Dutch culture while paying due respect to an African host nation? That was the question posed by the Dutch Foreign Ministry to the architects of its new embassy in Ethiopia. And this was the answer. Dutch architects Dick van Hammeren and Bjarne Mastenbroek created a building which intersects with the landscape in unexpected ways, creating an exchange of ideas between two worlds, Europe and Africa.
To find references in Ethiopia, we traveled around, and what really catched us very much was the way the churches in northern Ethiopia were built. By making this connection between the landscape and architecture, we built into the earth, like with the Lalibela churches, that were literally excavated from rock, soft rock. This is of course not excavated, but it looks as if it has been taken from the cotton soil.
The embassy is situated in a eucalyptus grove amid the urban sprawl of Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. The brief called for a chancellery and ambassador's residence and 3 staff houses. As the project developed, a new gatehouse and a small school building were added to the brief. But it's the main building which captures the imagination. 140 metres long, it appears embedded in the surrounding landscape. Its cement is pigmented the same red ochre colour as the Ethiopian earth. The building's rooftop is accessible in several places, and this space expresses the project's Dutch cultural heritage.
The building itself has a horizontal roof that can be covered with water at the rainy periods. So people actually live and work underwater level, which is a very Dutch theme, you could say.
So you get the real Dutch polder landscape of the dry parts and in between the ditches filled with water.
The construction was executed entirely by Ethiopian architects and building companies, using locally made materials wherever possible. The Amsterdam-based designers only visited the site every 4 to 5 months, but were very stringent in their demands. So did this make it a difficult process for the local architects?
I wouldn't say it was more difficult, I think more challenging, because obviously during construction we've never done this kind of a building in Ethiopia. Even from the concept, starting to do the concrete, pigmented concrete, trying to do the pigment ratios right, or the lines of the scaffolding or the formworks right. So it was a challenge.
Any preconceptions the designers may have had about local building work were soon dissolved.
We have been extremely surprised by the good contact between the local parties and ourselves. The local architect has represented us extremely well, and being a local builder, we were absolutely surprised by their quality of building.
There's another important aspect related to sustainability is that we wanted to design a building that could really be made in Ethiopia itself by the Ethiopians. We didn't want to import a prefabricated structure made in Holland and just montaged together at the site.
Inside and out, the earthen colouring reinforces a strong sense of Ethiopia's traditional architecture. Every plank for the concrete formwork or mould into which concrete is poured was purposefully tilted and misaligned to create a distinctive rough-hewn finish. The driveway passes right through the main building, dividing the chancellery from the ambassador's residence. A rooftop walkway and staircase connect the residence's private areas to its official function rooms. For the ambassador, it's a bit like working from home, and he's always aware of his visitors' impressions of the place.
I see it at the faces when I have visitors and I guide them to my room. Some have a big smile and say, wow, this is fantastic, this looks like a cathedral, this is very much unique and I like it very much. Some other comments are not so positive, they look more at the fact that it is not very light, it looks a little bit dark, it's not that easy to actually appreciate everything because of the way that it has been constructed.
But for the embassy's staff, any misgivings about the building are outweighed by the bold design features, like the oversized windows, which provide spectacular views of the surrounding landscape.
It's a bit cold during this weather. Other than that, I like it. It's beautiful, bright, big windows.
And it's this intersection with the landscape that makes the building succeed.
We tried to make something that is really respectful to the country. It doesn't simply import some ideas or concepts from the West, but really took Ethiopian culture in a way as a point of departure.
In the next episode of Building for Islam, we visit a stunningly restored Islamic mosque hidden in a small town in Yemen, a modern high-rise building that cuts down on air conditioning in Singapore, and a covered traders market which has revitalised commercial life in Burkina Faso, West Africa.